I would like to tell you about the worst concert I have ever been to. It was so bad I walked out twice. I was reminded of this a few days ago, and from this time perspective there are actually a couple of takeaways which popped into my mind. I'd like to share them with you. I hope you find the story interesting and entertaining, but more to the point, I hope you find the takeaways informative, inspiring and encouraging, just to prove that some good things can sometimes come out of bad situations. So this concert was about 15 or 16 years ago, and it featured a jazz guitarist, which a friend of mine was really into and wanted to go to see. Now, I like jazz, or certain types of jazz at any rate, and I thought this would be a nice concert to go to, so along we went. It was in a proper concert hall. It wasn't the back of a pub somewhere, so bear that in mind. So we were sitting in the audience, and the support act came on. There were three young guys, obviously fresh out of college. They had nice grey suits, and they were playing a saxophone, a violin and a piano type keyboard. So they started their first number, and there were notes flying all over the place, up and down the scales, arpeggios, riffs. They were displaying a technical prowess which was mind-boggling. It really was. However, well, for me and for some other people, this was not really music we wanted to listen to. Now, music is very subjective, but to me, it needs to have some sort of depth, some sort of soul, shall we say, even with jazz, or particularly with jazz. That's, I think, one of the points of jazz. You are expressing yourself. And this was really cold, really clinical. It was really boring. And after the first number, my friend and I looked at each other and, we didn't know what to think. So after the second number, which was more of the same, and then they started the third number, so we looked at each other and did the expression. I'm not sure how that's going to come over on camera, but that means, let's get out of here. So we did. So we walked out. We didn't leave the theatre. We just left the auditorium. We standing in the corridor discussing what we had heard, and we were agreeing that it didn't really suit the two of us, at least anyway. And I looked around after a while, and there were about a dozen people in the corridor who had the same idea as us, and they absolutely didn't like this, and so enough to leave the theatre. Now, being British, most of us are polite, so I'm guessing most people stayed in the audience. They would clap politely and wait for them to get off for the headliner to arrive. So although we personally didn't enjoy this little group, there are two takeaways which I appreciate now from this time perspective. First of all, it doesn't matter how technically brilliant you are. That does not necessarily mean that you are going to write brilliant music. And then I thought, well, the opposite of this is also true. You do not have to be a technical genius in order to write good music. In fact, a lot of the musicians and people I know who write good music are not necessarily brilliant performers. I do believe that some producers actually create their music by clicking notes onto a piano roll. I think some of them also do this using trial and error, so they move notes around until they get something they like. I can't imagine of anything slower and more frustrating than that. But if you can play a few notes on a keyboard and put them into your DAW, it is the musical ideas which matter, not the fact that you can play a run of notes or a scale or an arpeggio in 1.5 seconds. Now, I know some composers and producers wish they could play their instrument, the keyboard, shall we say, better than they actually do. And yes, absolutely, if you have a better command of your instrument, I think you will come up with better, more interesting tunes and harmonies and melodies. However, the two do not necessarily go together. I would say increased skill would suggest more options to you when you're composing music. but it is certainly not an essential quality to make music, to compose and write music. So while I would certainly suggest that it is a good thing to learn more about your instrument and how to play it better, I don't think it is essential in order to write good music. So that's takeaway one. The second takeaway, I have to say, comes from the act themselves. Now, some people obviously thought they were good enough to put on stage. And I am fairly sure there must have been at least one person in the audience, quite possibly more, who thought they were brilliant, who really appreciated their technical skills and expertise, and perhaps they even enjoyed the music. Music is, after all, subjective. So the second takeaway is that it doesn't matter, in a sense, what sort of music you are writing. You will find other people on the same wavelength as you who enjoy your music. Now, I have a friend who has written a lot of music, but no one gets to hear it because they are frightened to put it out there. And I say to him, look, it doesn't matter what sort of music you put out there. Some people will just not like it. But by the same token, there will be a lot of people who do. And if you don't put your music out there, you will never find them. So that's takeaway number two. Now, I can't remember the name of the band, so I have no idea how they are doing, if they're still together or how well they may be doing. I actually can't remember the name of the main act, which is probably just as well, as you will discover when I complete the story. So after the first act finished, we went back into the auditorium. The jazz guitarist came out. He sat on a chair and played his guitar. He played the first number, and at the start of the second number, one of the strings broke. So he got up from the chair and he took his guitar off stage. And I thought he'd be just swapping it out for another one with his roadie or a stagehand and coming back on stage. But he didn't. He was off stage. It seemed like about 10 minutes. I don't know how long it was. It was a long time. And he'd been restringing his guitar. He came back on stage and he sat down and he didn't start to play. He started to tune his guitar, which took another 10 minutes or so it seemed. So he played the second number and he obviously wasn't happy with the tuning because he spent another 10 minutes tuning or retuning his guitar. And me and my friend, we sort of looked at each other and we did the thing and we left. And my friend was incredibly disappointed with the music he was playing. I think when you go to a concert, you expect the person or the group who you go to see to play their top favourite pieces of music, their music they are most known for. And this guy apparently didn't, according to my friend. So we were twice disappointed, and this time we did walk out and we left the theatre. So that is the worst concert I have ever been to. Now, with hindsight, perhaps we should have gone to the box office and demanded a refund, but we didn't. We're British. So I'm going to ask a little bit of a weird question. Well, let's go with two questions. What is the worst concert you have ever been to and why? So the second question probably hasn't happened to so many people. Is there a musical experience you have had which was bad, but which eventually turned into something good, or which you took something good away from? It's about finding the good and the positive in any situation. So if you have dragged a victory out of defeat in somewhere, I think that would be a really interesting lesson to share. Be really interested to hear that. As always, thank you so much for spending time with me, listening to my stories. I hope you got something out of it. If you have enjoyed this video, there's a subscribe button down there and a big thumb. Clicking either or both would be much appreciated. And if you have enjoyed this video, I think you will enjoy these videos as well. Thanks again. I will see you again in the next video.